How does a company get so big, so dominant, that it's worth more than the next 10 biggest car makers on the planet combined? And at the same time, how does that exact same company become the single most hated brand in its entire industry? Seriously, how does that even happen? The story of Tesla is one of the wildest paradoxes in business, and we're going to break it down. So first, let's just get a sense of the scale we're talking about here. At its absolute peak, Tesla's market cap blew past $1.4 trillion. That's not just a big number. It's more than Toyota, Volkswagen, Mercedes, Ford, GM, all of them, put together. The market wasn't treating Tesla like a car company. It was treating it like a world-changing tech revolution. And yet, while all of that was happening, this was happening. The company's public perception was just cratering. I mean, look at Germany, a huge market for cars. Tesla is the only EV brand with a net negative perception. And it's not just a little negative. It's a catastrophic minus 51%. You even have owners talking about having Tesla shame. It's a full-on identity crisis. So what's the deal? How did we get to this point? I mean, this was a brand built on this grand, noble mission to save the world, to speed up our switch to sustainable energy. How did that brand become one of the most polarizing things on the planet? Well, to get the answer, we have to look at some forgotten founders, a couple of near-death experiences, and some truly legendary public fails. To really understand this whole paradox, you got to go back to the beginning. And the very first thing you need to know is that the guy you're probably thinking of, yeah, he didn't actually start Tesla. Okay, so picture this. It's 2003. Tesla Motors is founded by two engineers, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. And their vision was pretty radical for the time. They wanted to prove that electric cars didn't have to be slow, ugly, glorified golf carts. They looked around and saw rich people driving a Prius to show they cared about the planet, but then hopping in a Porsche for fun. Their big idea was, what if we combine them? What if we build an EV that's not just green, but is actually faster and, sexier than the gas guzzlers? The vision was there. The cash, not so much. And that's when Elon Musk enters the picture, fresh off his huge payday from selling PayPal. In 2004, he swoops in with the money they desperately needed. And this is where the story takes a very ruthless, very Silicon Valley turn. Musk's investment didn't just buy him a seat at the table. It made him chairman of the board. And pretty quickly, his vision for the company started clashing with Eberhard's. By 2007, the board, led by Musk, kicked out the company's original CEO and co-founder. The whole thing got incredibly messy and ended up in a huge legal battle that would literally rewrite the company's own origin story. So Eberhard sued Musk and Tesla, and the fight got nasty. But in the end, they settled. And the settlement came with this really bizarre condition. 5 different people, including Elon Musk, would all be legally allowed to call themselves co-founders. Think about that. It was a genius bit of corporate strategy that basically let Musk retroactively write himself into the very beginning of the Tesla story. So with control of the company locked down, the next chapter really sets the tone for everything that follows. It established a core theme for Tesla, surviving these insane, self-inflicted crises and constantly living on the absolute brink of total collapse. And this didn't just happen once, it happened twice. The first time was back in 2008. The entire global economy was in a meltdown, and Tesla was just burning through cash. They were literally hours away from going bankrupt. And the absolute final deadline to get new funding and save the company? Christmas Eve. I mean, no pressure, right? Musk went to his investors basically begging for money to keep the lights on. But one of the major investors saw a chance to make a power play. They said no. The plan was to block the deal, force Musk out, and then take control of the company for themselves. It was a total standoff, with the clock just ticking down to zero. And this is where Musk makes this just incredible gamble. He pulls together the absolute last of his personal fortune from the PayPal sale and pushes it all in, putting it all on the table to save Tesla. And on this one last, desperate conference call just hours before the deadline, the other investors finally folded. The company was saved. And that moment, that us against the world fight for survival, it became a core part of the Tesla legend. It's what really energized its first most passionate supporters. Fast forward a decade, and believe it or not, it happened all over again. They called it production hell. The company was trying to mass produce the Model 3, and Musk had this grand vision for a fully automated factory. He called it the Alien Dreadnought. Well, it was a spectacular failure. The robots just couldn't do the job. And once again, the company found itself weeks away from bankruptcy. They famously had to build a whole new assembly line in a giant tent in the parking lot just to have a prayer of hitting their production targets. The lesson here was painful, but it was clear. Musk himself admitted it was all his fault, tweeting that he'd made a huge mistake and had totally underestimated the value of human workers. Getting through production hell was absolutely brutal, but it forced them to figure out manufacturing in a way that put them years ahead of everybody else. So Tesla somehow survived 2 near-death experiences. But just surviving doesn't make you a trillion-dollar company. Now we have to look at the other side of the paradox, the moments that created that intense, almost fanatical love and loyalty the brand inspires. It really all started with the Model S back in 2012. I mean, this car was a bombshell. It wasn't just a great electric car. It was one of the best cars ever made. Full stop. But the thing that really blew people's minds was its safety. It got the highest safety rating ever given to any car. And during the roof crush test, the car didn't just pass. It literally broke the testing machine. That one detail completely transformed the image of electric vehicles overnight. And then, of course, there was the infamous Cybertruck reveal. You remember this. Musk is on stage bragging about its shatterproof armor glass. And then his own designer throws a metal ball at it and shatters it, and then does it again on the other window. It should have been a complete disaster, but instead, that raw, unscripted, very human moment went insanely viral. It generated way more buzz than any slick, polished ad campaign ever could have. You see, this rebellious, playful spirit, it's literally coded into the cars themselves. When you bought a Tesla, you weren't just buying a car, you were buying a piece of technology that was constantly evolving. For example, if you pull the autopilot stalk 4 times in a row, the road on your screen turns into the Rainbow Road from Mario Kart. And it doesn't stop there. If your car has air suspension, you can type in an access code that turns your car's on-screen graphic into the submarine from the James Bond movie The Spy Who Loved Me. It's this kind of software magic that made every other car feel instantly old and boring, and it's what created that cult-like following. And all of this comes from this deeply juvenile, kind of rebellious sense of humor. I mean, the original plan for the model lineup was for the names to literally spell out sexy. They had the Model S and the Model X, but then Ford, who owned the trademark for Model E, wouldn't let them use it. So they had to settle for the Model 3, which gave them the not quite as cool S3XY. It's just a perfect little story that captures the personality at the very heart of the company. And that brings us to today, because Tesla's entire history has just been one insane, near-fatal gamble after another that somehow paid off. But now, the company is facing what might be its biggest challenge yet. Look, Tesla is not the only game in town anymore, not by a long shot. The competition is absolutely fierce now. You've got exciting new players like Rivian and Lucid. You have the old school giants like Ford and BMW who have finally woken up and are making great EVs. And then you have the Chinese behemoth BYD, which has already sold more electric vehicles than Tesla. The entire battlefield has changed. And here is the ultimate paradox, the final twist in the story. Tesla's defining feature has always been its ability to survive crises, most of which, let's be honest, were of its own making. That culture that saved it time and time again, that relentless, rule-breaking, go-for-broke personality, is now creating its biggest existential threat by alienating so many potential customers and creating that negative perception we saw right at the start. Tesla survived financial collapse. It survived production hell. But its next great challenge is whether it can survive itself. And that leaves us with this one final crucial question about its future. Can the mission of the company finally be separated from the man who has come to define it?